911, what are you reporting?
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Damn it, I'm really confused. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence, and he was dead when she hit the ground. I didn't see any cars. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence.
What are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was?
It was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
All right, folks, I want to welcome our guest to the show. It is Connor from Bigfoot Anonymous. Welcome to the show, Connor.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It was awesome meeting you in Tennessee, and now we're camping in Tennessee soon. So this is like a very perfect bridge for the in-between.
Yeah, man. What did you think about the conference? I enjoyed the conference a couple of months ago. I had a blast, and I know you were there. You came by just about every table and did some filming and put some stuff on your YouTube page. What did you think about the conference? Is that the first time you'd been there, or had you been there before?
That was my first time at the Gatlinburg Smoky Mountain Conference, and I've of course heard tons of things. So I had a couple of expectations, but man, I was blown away. The speakers were really cool. Of course, I love Maria, Stacy, Ronnie, and then of course Dr. Meldrum just was next level. He's like the Michael Jordan of this community. So it was really cool bouncing ideas off him, even for the brief few minutes that I had close encounter with him. But what really brought me to it was the tables, the vendors, and you, Dixie Cryptid, Buckeye Bigfoot, Forest of Monsters. That's who I'm about, the underground. So I had a great time, and then we camped at Cades Cove that night and had an extraordinary time. Of course, we got whacked by a giant storm. Everybody knows that wild fury that came through, but I got tons of awesome footage walking the trails through there, and we actually got some nice night vision shots. I left my audio recorder out. We didn't get any, crazy calls, but we got that wrath of the storm. And then we stopped at the Etowah Mounds on the way home, and that was a huge bucket list for me because I'm big on the mound builders, and there was a couple cool newspaper articles way back in the day that there was a big flood at the Etowah Mounds, and it scattered bones all over for acres. So we stopped by there, and there's three big platform pyramids. And I even talked to the ranger about the giant bones and skulls, and he's like, "The pictures of the skulls are not real, but the story, there's something to it." So that's all I had to hear, and I definitely channeled the energy on top of those giant pyramid structures and megaliths. I'm huge on just the old world and ley lines and energy, so I felt like I was pulled there all the way from Ohio, where this journey started.
Yeah, man. I talked to Seth Breedlove there, and Seth was saying that one of the biggest conferences he'd been to is out in Ohio, and he thought that the Smoky Mountain Conference blew that out of the water, which surprised me. And I certainly trust Seth's opinion on it, but I was surprised that it was as big as it's gotten because I was there last year just as a spectator, not as a vendor, and there was probably twice as many, if not 2.5 times, 3 times the amount of people there this year. So it was a really cool conference. And I saw in your video on your Bigfoot Anon YouTube page where you got to meet the late great Carrie from Bigfoot Odyssey, which is really sad. We lost him, just within the last week or so. And I don't want to get into sad things, but it was really cool to see him on camera and you guys interacting, and you guys had a great interaction. So I know that's something that you'll carry forward with you for forever on. So, well, let's talk about what got you into this in the beginning, right? Not everybody's into cryptids and Bigfoot and these conferences. What got you interested in Bigfoot and cryptids in general?
Oh man, just growing up on the Mistake on the Lake in Cleveland. We had South Bay Bessie, the Lake Erie monster, which is like a plesiosaur Nessie type creature that they actually had a bounty on her head for $100,000. And there was a lot of cool reports back in the day of like dozens of sailors on two different ships, getting to see two of them fight near Toledo and near a bar where I went to college in Bowling Green, but more towards on the lake. There was a place where you could go in the basement and like feed chum and just pretty much dump like the leftovers into the lake and feed Bessie. So that was always just like part of the culture. But then, of course, we had the Ohio Grassman, and a lot of my camping trips were down in Salt Fork. And then the Cuyahoga Valley National Park is where I did a lot of hiking and waterfall chasing. And right there is known for Helltown, a very cursed location. And I'm big on these ancient creatures, these human hybrids, these real earthlings. I think they channel on another level of energy. So these pyramids, these structures, these cursed lands, I think they're like magnets for these animal type creatures. And so I try to, just experiment and just look for crazy stuff. I'm just an outdoorsman. I'm just looking for fossils. I'm just filming waterfalls, but I know that these creatures are lurking around. So it's always just been part of my natural way. But I've always been curious about strange stuff and like unsolved mysteries and horror movies. And then growing up on my grandparents' farm down the Ohio Valley, right by Wheeling and Moundsville, which have tons of sun worshiper and mound stories. And there's just so much cursed land with Charles Manson. Grew up right in that area. A lot of just huge points that kind of now I look back, I'm like, oh man, that's where that part of the personality came from. But just hunting, fishing, hiking, and all the superstitions of my childhood pretty much led to this. And then I was a high school writer for the Devilier newspaper, and I loved just diving into strange stuff. But it was time to write my stories, and I've had so many strange, weird encounters and experiences, and we do seances and try to channel the moon on blood moon eclipses. We're really trying to experiment. We're trying to tap into what the ancient people are doing, the Native Americans, the ancient Sumerians, and the Mayans, the Incans. Even if it's not, exactly Bigfoot pointed, it's just trying to expand our consciousness, energy, and I then in the long run, I think that gets us closer to nature. So even on my normal fishing trips and hiking trips, I'm a little bit more sensitive to the trail, but I'm very realistic. Not everything is Bigfoot, but I do think the forest, holds a lot more secrets than normal society gives credit to. And if you look between the lines in movies and really just ancient text and really carved into stone, you can connect all the dots to there's something out there in the forest. And I honestly think there's a relation between us and the Sasquatch, and they might be our guardians compared to a lot of the other extremities out there. Dogman, other chimeras that escape these laboratories, and then just the dark forces. With light comes the opposite of that. So we can't be ignorant or totally try to wipe it off the face of the earth. Well, in our imagination, in our minds. Sometimes that goes far with mind over matter, but we have to be real with ourselves. And I'm big on just spreading awareness because people are going missing. People are having really scary encounters. Luckily, the violent encounters aren't just flooding the map, but they do happen. So I just always try to raise awareness about being prepared, being smart with telling people where you are, and just being realistic that do not follow the whispers. There might be monsters in the woods. Go in after before dark. Like listen to old grandma's tales because there's some truth to it.
I certainly want to get into some of the Bigfoot stuff, but what was your first brush or what you perceived to be your first brush with the paranormal, and what kind of weird experiences did you have in the beginning?
Yes, it was a really crazy story. The Sleepy Hollow Wolfman, which is, I guess, like a dogman type creature, but it could just be a wild man, and that's all we could call it back in the day. But my buddy Jake and Alex actually had a evening encounter when it ran across the road, and they thought it was a type of deer, and then they realized it was an upright canine type being on two legs, and then it got up a hill in record amount of time. So for weeks, I always heard about this Wolfman story. And then finally, it was golf season. I was sleeping over at Alex's house, and we're playing pool down his basement. He's got it decked out. I'm just happy to be there, playing for hours. Just having a great time. And then all together, all of us felt just a strange feeling. And I actually had them type up their testimony for my first book. And they describe it as physically hearing something outside, but I think it was more sixth sense, just we sensed that something was watching us. So we killed all the lights, and there's a huge walkout basement, so it's all glass, so we're super vulnerable. So we crawl to the side, and there's a small window, and we're all peeking out it, and we see this huge hulking figure right on the tree line, and right behind it is caves and cliffs, and that's a really famous area. But there's also abandoned movie theater drive-in and an abandoned swimming hole. So again, high energy locations, good memories back dozens of decades ago, and now that things here to be, prowling. And I just think that it was very curious. Three teenage boys having a lot of good energy, but we're looking at it, and it felt like forever, of course. And then we dive into the stairwell, and then a couple minutes later, we try to peek back. We don't see it again. I just remember it being blacker than night. Like you could see its blackness behind the darkness behind it. Uh, Alex and Jake, they say that it had glowing eyes and it was like hypnotic. I honestly just think that we were so entranced by seeing something that was bigger than reality, that it put us into like a frozen standstill, which is, pretty normal. I felt it multiple times since then. But even just messing around, talking with them, it still feels like a dream. But what's crazy is after that, we were trying to watch a movie and we were just so scared down in the basement that we went all the way upstairs, 2 floors up, and slept in Alex's room, all huddled together. And then Alex's mom asked us, "Why don't you sleep in the game room?" And we said, we saw some kind of monster in the backyard. And actually, this square woman, by the book, she said every night since they moved in there, she heard man like owl calls. So that kind of somewhat, confirmed what we saw. We never had any more strange encounters over in that location, but over at my house, I had a lot of other weird things happen. One time on a blood moon eclipse, me and Jake were laying in my backyard, probably like 2:30 a.m. Entranced by the sky, like 2001 Space Odyssey coming to life. Like we felt like it was dream waiting for us, and we heard something approach my shed really heavy, and we were just in the moment. So at first we just thought it was my two kitty cats, and we kind of brushed it off. Then we noticed the cats were by us, so we're like maybe it's a deer or something. And we both get up and we're like sneaking towards it. We had a stick, and then we just got hit by this force. I wouldn't really call it mind speak. Again, I would just call it just like a warning, really. There was no audible sound, but we could just feel, just get back. And we just laid back down, internally surrendered, didn't even think about it the rest of the night. But what we think is it came from across the street because there's a huge patch of woods. And I actually saw a crazy white humanoid type creature. I wouldn't say it's a Bigfoot, more like a pale crawler one night. And that's the best visual encounter I've ever had. I was driving home from Family Video, a movie rental place. It was after midnight. I closed, and I was going to Prospect to Boston Road. And Boston Road goes all the way to Helltown, so that's already cursed. But I actually found out there's a witch's stone near those woods too. So again, high energy caverns, anything's possible when you add in all those elements. But I was going Prospect to Boston, and I was probably 150 yards from the intersection, and this white creature just goes across the street. And I just saw the final two steps, pretty much one and a half, and then into the woods. But it looked wet. It looked see-through. You could kind of see its veins, probably like 5 to 6 feet tall, probably the same size as a normal man. I don't think it was a homeless person. I've seen homeless people that have been out in the woods, for a while, living under bridges. They get more dirty than see-through. But I definitely think it was some type of weird crawler, described as a rake. But I think there is these weird human hybrids that, just live amongst us. And then add in other tribes of people that they might not be creatures. They're just other type of people that look different for many years. And I don't think they were, but there is stories of the melon heads in the same area, Ohio, where I grew up. I don't think it was a melon head, but could be some variation of it. And those three were just kind of mild compared to some kind of closer up stuff I've had down here in Florida. We've had a tree be shoved down to us at Bellamy Bridge when we were out there about 4 hours after midnight, way too long. And then at Torreya State Park, we had something huge waiting in a creek. And I have that recorded on a GoPro, and you could just hear it working its way through. And the buddy I was with, a military veteran that has seen action and his mind is all over the place sometimes. He was like being pulled down the hill, like wanted to go towards it. And it was like a point of no return to me. And I was backing away. And it's pretty funny. I have like a little interview after it that I'm like talking about what happened. And it's not the old chipper self. My heartbeat's actually probably going faster, but I'm talking a lot slower and I'm like pretty scared. So yeah, I've had some mild encounters, and then we've had a lot of good luck up in Alabama at my buddy Kenny's house, Flat Rock Booger. He had a crazy YouTube, but he has had some crazy threats of people coming to his yard and his property unannounced. It's really messed up, but he took his stuff down. But I've been sharing his evidence, and one of his videos, there's something that knocks on the side of his trailer, and another video that I'm thinking the same creature opens up his mom's door and sticks its head inside the house, and then runs back out and then screams in the woods. And he has lots of good audio calls. So we were filming a documentary originally called From Fear to Understanding, but now it's called Sasquatch Physical or Phenomenon. But I'm really excited. But we recorded some crazy calls that sounded like them singing while we were sitting around the fire. And we actually sent them over to Doug Highcheck, and he gave us the thumbs up. And he's in the documentary talking about the clip. And what's really cool is they sent it over to the Olympic Project out in, out west in those mountains, and the same frequencies and correlations between our recordings. So it's pretty breakthrough stuff just for some after fire shenanigans. But that same night, we had something run past our tent, and we have it recorded me yelling out, "Hey!" And I wasn't trying to intimidate or anything. I was just trying to get it to step one more time so I could gauge where it was. That way, if it would barge me, at least I could put my arms up or something. But luckily, I feel like I walk with light, and I feel like all people walk with light. So I don't give in to the darkness. I definitely go with people that are armed. Sometimes I just respect nature, and hopefully, it carries me on. And I feel like the connection is so much farther than the technology that we can bring outside. And that's the weird conundrum and balance that we go with. Either you go, naked with nothing, and you have your encounters, and it's definitely to the soul, but then you can't share it with the world. And then you go with your GoPro and your tri-field meter and everything else, and then you have mild to no encounters. So it's a weird conundrum we have to walk, but I do it way more for my journey and for my soul, just because I even hear, now that I live in Florida and I'm living on my car and living wild, I still hear people like, "You're still chasing Bigfoot, Connor?" And that is all I need to hear, because I'm like, man, even those kids that I grew up with, like fifth grade Connor was preaching to them that there's a hairy man in the woods. So I'm still just living true to who I am. And I feel like it's bringing me on a wild journey, because I've met so many cool people, and it's really expanded my mind in the right places. And past, pain, it's able to overcome it because my appreciation for the world. And I also wake up in the morning with this zest and this energy because I know that the establishment is holding us down and hiding some things from us. So I think it's my duty that I have to raise the flag and speak my word, And I'm definitely the new era and the youth to this. And I love the OGs and I love learning the old techniques, but I'm really excited about the new era with like mind and consciousness and manifestation. But then also comes with the new stuff is like the tree structures and the linkage to like I just mind speak. That's all new to this data that has been put out for the last 100 years. But man, I think it goes back to the pyramids, to the carvings, to David versus Goliath, and even just Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon religion. He found Cain in the 1800s, and Cain was as tall as him on a horse, covered in hair. That doesn't make me want to join that church, but that should make all of them interested in our community. And I've had a lot of awesome talks with the elders and different missionaries from different types of churches and religions, because I think that it all connects. The giants are our ancestors, and they gave us all of our knowledge about spirituality, medicine. I don't think the Native Americans were just like testing roots and plants, maybe a little bit, but someone gave them the guidance. And if you really tap into it, the Hoopa project, like David Paulides talks about, modern Sasquatch were living with Native Americans less than 100 years, like less than 100 years away. That's modern times. And then 50 years with Bigfoot in Tennessee, up in your neck of the woods, the Carter farm, they got to watch fox raise up and then have a family and kind of get to see the dynamic. So there is this precious information that's out there. I just encourage everybody to dive in it. And like one example, my TikTok is just easy access to proof and stories and encounters. So I call it the largest digital database of Sasquatch evidence out there, other than what the establishment and the federal government and the military have. But I just want to make it easy and accessible for people to see good Sasquatch photos, prints, that there is hair out there that correlates. And we've had a lot of good luck with our hair, and we've have really cool videos of it going under microscopes, and it's clear and green and tan. And the hair we found in the green swamp matches the hair that we found in Mayaca, which are two huge skunk ape meccas. But that hair also is very similar to the stuff that they're finding in Tennessee, Manimal Research, and then out in the Cascade Mountains, and then out in overseas, where they're finding Yowie hair in Australia. I definitely think there is different variations of these creatures. It shows it right when you see the Mayaca skunk ape photo, which looks more like an orangutan, and it has fangs and a little bit of a snout. And then compared to Patty, the Bluff Creek, which she has breasts, she looks like a female, and she looks like more like a human hybrid. There's these stories of these devil monkeys and rod benders and all these different weird variations of like shorter but stouter, and they look like Shrek, more like an ogre or orc, but they're covered in hair. So it's very interesting, and I'm just an open ear for all people. There's been high end scientists that want a little bit of what my psychedelic journey has led to, but then there's also people that just come into my video game store and they're still like torn up because their family still doesn't take them serious. And then I'm there for them, man. And that's all we can be, is just here for each other. And that's what you've created, is an awesome platform for researchers and real people just to share their encounters. And that's what it's all about, because awareness and knowledge is everything.
You mentioned, well, there's a lot to unpack there, but the one thing I want to go to first and foremost, you mentioned the 50 years with Bigfoot up in Tennessee. I did a couple of Wayne from Animal Research. I used a couple of his interviews with Janice, and he and I just did a follow up on Friday, and I sort of shared some opinions about what was going on there. And I even had people reach out to me, and there was a guy who sent me tons of information. He sent me documents, he sent me photographs, and he sent me videos of people on the property there, where you're supposed to be able to see Squeaky in one of the videos. And then there's a video where he's pointing that Fox is down in this like ditch right outside of where this old place where he used to sleep. I think it was like I don't know, a carport or something. And Janice is in the video, and she's going through and they're looking. And I have to be honest, Connor, I didn't see what these people saw in this video, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that. I don't know how much knowledge you have of that story, or I learned a lot during Wayne's interviews with Janice. And, Janice had an answer for everything. And she had a lot of experiences that she shared. I guess the thing about it is, and I said this to Wayne on Friday's show, when you make these fantastic and miraculous claims, there has to be something to back that up. And even this video, like I said, that this guy sent me, it's supposed to be this rare video that, they filmed on the property, and you're supposed to be able to see these two Sasquatch. Now, there was a part of the clip that it did look like something was moving underneath this barrel, but it wasn't anything definitive, right? There's still no actual proof. And then I had a guy reach out to me today. He sent me this diatribe. I think it was on Facebook, or I don't know which, maybe Instagram. And it was this diatribe about me saying that if Janice knew where these bodies were buried, she would go and solve the mystery. And he's like, well, she may not necessarily do that. If Fox was her friend, she wouldn't do that. And there's no guarantee that it's going to prove anything. So I said all that to say, where are you on that story in and of itself? I mean, do you believe it hook, line, and sinker? Do you believe there's more to the story? Where are you on this 50 years of Bigfoot thing?
I definitely think it's very interesting. First and foremost, I've seen some of the strange underground videos. I know Scott Carpenter was on the property as well. I've I don't know if it was the same files I saw, but I definitely was not 100% convinced by any of the new footage or the new follow-ups. But the story does contain intimate information that either they have crazy imaginations or they did have some type of connection to this wild man in the forest. I definitely have heard the stories of, Blackie taking that girl into the woods. You would think that that would have some kind of paper trail, but it really hasn't. So there is a lot of fantastical claims. And I even know she speaks of telepathy and that she still gets messages from them to this day. Of course, that is very hard to prove, but there is something to it because I've heard some, the crazy stuff she says, but it does connect to other intimate stories that I've heard, and that's as far as I can go. And I can't wait till I meet her one day and I can have that one-on-one conversation and ask Wayne. That's all I talk about with him. I'm like, Janice Carter, Janice Carter. I want to have that mano talk around the fire just to hear the intimate stuff. But I definitely think that if you are close with these creatures, it does, stir up some energy and powers just because people that have touched these creatures do have that mind connection to them. So I'm just an open ear. I'm a sponge. I just take what's good. It just bounces off. But all I do is just store it and try to correlate it with other things later. But it's a beautiful story, and the words that they use as translations, like knock, Nawk, that means friend. I use that out in the forest, and I've had mild responses back. So it's taken me closer, and of course, Janice's father was or grandfather was close with Native American culture, and that's sacred. So I take her for a word, but there's a lot of wild stories out there. So I don't fall for everything, but I just try to take it all in.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the differences. You mentioned that earlier. You've had experiences in Ohio, you've had experiences in Florida with what people call the skunk ape. And I've had several people. I've had Marie Dumont on the show. I've had other people from Florida that have done a lot of research in Florida. And I've asked the question, you know, I think one of the guys that I had on the show got a little pissed off with me because I kept saying that skunk ape was smaller than and he was like, no, they're not necessarily smaller. He didn't want the Bigfoot in Florida to be smaller than the ones in the Pacific Northwest. I was like, okay, I got you. But so let's talk a little bit about what you think the differences are. Like you mentioned the photo that came out of Florida. It's skipping it's
the Myakka skunk ape photos, and that's a really cool story too. And I've heard there was two that were submitted anonymously to the Sarasota Police Department. It was a story that an old woman took the photos because it kept taking the apples. And down here, a lot of people's research is they do like apples, so it does correlate. But I've actually heard from some of the Myakka locals that there's like dozens of those photos out there, and a couple people I've talked to said they've seen them. But again, I've heard a lot of fantastical claims. But I definitely think that it is a little bit different than say Patty. But through this, the state is a huge state. Down here in Florida is 2 time zones. I'm over here in the Panhandle, right by Alabama and Georgia. So, the Tennessee mountains is a straight highway down to here. So I'm sure that a lot of the strange creatures do come from the north, maybe when it is super cold. I don't think they migrate, but you got to think if they're wise creatures, they're going to travel how they want and see different things and encounter different experiences to soak it all in. And especially if they go through the creeks and through the rivers and they have all their ways that for this long they've been pretty off the radar, so it's working. But down in the Everglades where it's more isolated, all the tracks that they find, 90% of the tracks that they find are 4-toed. So that's really interesting. It's a little bit different than say the 5-toed traditional Jeff Meldrum squatch track. But when we were in Myakka, we actually found a 6-toe footprint, and that links to like the Nephilim and possible inbreeding. But again, I think these creatures adapt, and maybe they will just grow extra toes after they're out there for so long. But their tracks are a little bit different. The 4-toe tracks, the long toes, it's super strong, kind of monkey-like, less traditional like man. But I've seen three-toed prints up here by the water, and that really sways people to, is this thing half like lizard man and swamp thing and creature from the Black Lagoon? Because all those are swamp type Bigfoot, essentially their own perspective and reiterance about it. But man, I definitely think that the creatures down here have to adapt to the heat, so they act like gators, and how gators can, dig up in the banks and literally have like caves down there. I definitely think that they're down there and cooling down. They spend a lot of time in the creeks. Over here in the Panhandle, right where I'm at, is the Mariana Caverns, and that is a huge cave system that goes down to the aquifer, and they still are finding new passageways. So imagine these creatures that maybe have echolocating or just the max vision, that they could just feel things and get through. They could just traverse that whole labyrinth and subterranean chambers all the way up to the Tennessee mountains. And again, I'm big on the paranormal and the wildness, but I am pretty grounded in this. But I do think that these creatures are, masters of energy, and protons, electrons, neutrons. They have two forms: waveform in particle form. We spend most of our life in particle form, but in our true moments of being, we could become waveform. So it's malleable. And I think that these creatures that are outside of society, not getting zapped by our waves, not drinking our poison water, they can maybe tap in, even if it's just for a brief second, even if it takes massive lifetimes of training for them to do that. I do think it's possible, and science thinks it's possible too. But I definitely think that I've been pulled to this path because now I came from the land of 10,000 mounds, Ohio, the mistake on the lake, huge sea serpents, and I lived out of my car. And now I live right by the Ocheesee Pond, where it's a magical story. In 1873, this wild man type creature was harassing women and children of the village over at Ocheesee Pond. So then the Native Americans and the Civil War veterans teamed together, and in 1874, they finally captured this creature by the Devil's Half Acre. And supposedly they took it in a net, put it on a train, took it to Tallahassee, showed the governor, and he said, "No way, Jose, take it to Chattahoochee Hospital." And Chattahoochee is a really famous insane asylum. And Gary Oldman actually made a movie about Chattahoochee, and he was a war veteran with PTSD, came over, and they did cruel and unusual experiments. So guess what they did to the 9-foot tall John Doe? I hope not, but 3 years later, they said he passed away, and they buried him with a bunch of Native Americans on the property, and then built a building on top of him. And what's really cool is a filmmaker buddy of mine is the head IT guy over there and lives on campus. So I get to march around campus, and I've actually filmed the supposed building that he's under. But I've also been told that he was deep in the woods, and they put a golf course out there, and you'll never find him, Connor. But I've videotaped entrances into the bunkers, into the deep underground military bases. So once Jack is a famous filmmaker and out of the hospital rotation, we're going to release that footage. But it's just an extraordinary story. And it was on the front page of the New York Times. And, it's never been on any widespread thing. I've never heard it on Finding Bigfoot or Sasquatch Chronicles or anything. And it comes right from the same location, the Garden of Eden. It's a 15 square mile area where 27 of the 28 trees in the Bible are right there. And then gopher wood, which Noah used to build the ark, the lightest, strongest wood in the world. You can't break it. You can only bend it. Torreya coniferous. There's only 2 other places it grows, and it's pretty cold climate. That's found right there. Delta that breaks into 4 rivers. Just like the good book says, it's magical. It's right there. And the Garden of Eden holds Ocheesee Pond, and then also Torreya State Park, where Stacy Brown got his famous Skunk Ape footage, and they filmed Finding Bigfoot episodes there. And everybody remembers the Finding Bigfoot episode where that's that greasy hand right on that front window on that glass. And she has, extraterrestrial visitors because she's a sacred goddess from ancient times. So, man, these Native American mounds with the river and the dam and all these ships that have crashed. That is just such high energy location. So I'm not surprised that there's just so much still going on. In Ocheezy Pond, I still talk to witnesses to this day, and I've posted the interviews on my YouTube. But I've saved some of the best ones for our documentaries. There's one really cool sound guy. He retired from the radio, and he's like going deaf. Built his own hearing aids, and he can tune them into different tones, and he can listen to them breathing in the swamp. And supposedly he knows where two mummies are back there. It's 9 square miles. It's like cypress trees, and the water levels really decide which way and how far you can go. So there's only certain times of the year that you can get to locations. And you got to think these masters of energy and these ancient beings probably strategically bury their dead, or at least place their sacred locations, you know. So I'm big on, you know, we have found the bones, the evidence is out there. There's many stories of them being held in asylums. That was in the 1800s. There was one in Alabama, like in the 80s. So, and there was tons of prison guards that were witnesses. So again, I think there's extraordinary evidence out there of giants, of Bigfoot, and of other creatures too. But we really just have to dig deep, and they definitely put that blanket of mystery and smoke and mirrors. But once you dive in it, man, and you just be real, good stories definitely find you out. But you know, I'm a storyteller myself. I know the telephone game. Once it talks from one person to the other, details get a little crazy, of course. But that's all we can do is just store data, try to draw correlations later, and I'm big on it.
You mentioned the Native American connection that came up recently. I did a show. I actually put out a bonus show today. It's Wednesday as we're recording this on Dogman, right? I had this lady on who'd had like 5 Dogman encounters, and that came up during what we were talking about. She's got Native American blood, she's got Gypsy blood, and I asked her why her, right? It's so rare for anybody to have any type of encounter with a cryptid, really, honestly. And then when you have 5 with Dogman, and she's the only person that I've ever had on the show that's actually had an encounter with Dogman. And so I asked her why her, and that's one of the things that she said. And you mentioned that a couple of times. I think there's that history in that culture runs really deep, obviously, within the Native American and First Nations people. But there's also some of these weird things that go along with Bigfoot, right? And you've mentioned it a couple of times. I'm very open-minded. I don't exclude anything on the show, and I'm open to plenty of things. But there's this woo part of Bigfoot that people sometimes refuse to talk about. Where are you on some of the things that people say, like the telepathic communication, the mind speak? You know, it's really, when I had Les Stroud on the show, I kept saying mind speak, and he said it's telepathy. It's telepathic communication. Let's call it what it is. Mind speak is this like dime store word, this word that's come up in the community that everybody uses. It's a token word for a telepathic communication with another creature. So given that, right, we've got this history in the Native American culture of them possibly living amongst these Native American tribes. Where do you think that puts these creatures? Do you think there's something supernatural about them? Do you think they're flesh and blood and they just have these certain abilities? Where are you on the woo part of Bigfoot?
I think we are all woo. I think we're all extraordinary. You know, we've all felt love. That's unmeasurable. Deja vu. That's unexplainable. The connections between child and parents. You know, your mom knows when something's going wrong. You have that sixth sense. I definitely think we feel more than our eyes and ears can see, of course. I definitely think that the Sasquatch have telepathic communication, just because human beings do. You have a thought about someone, then they text you. I know that's a pretty weak example compared to direct mind speak words. It's never happened to me, direct words, but I've definitely felt vibes and read the forest and been like, yep, it's time to go. So I think we are a little bit more malleable than just like what our ears hear and our eyes see. Our body is taking it in, but our personal being, we don't even know it. Like we can't see it. It's so much deeper. But I definitely think the telepathic connection is strong. One of my favorite stories that I love investigating, Kerry Arnold, he interviewed Kevin Saunders that had a wild encounter down the Apalachicola National Forest. He was hunting with a friend, and they saw like a weird thing in the distance, a Sasquatch just barely. And then in his tent that night, he had weird connection that this female Sasquatch like spoke to him and then ended up luring him out into the woods, revealing herself to him physically, and then took him to her parents and physically showed them. And then they warned him of the hunter he was with, and he was like, kind of brushed it off. And then, so to speak, they were right the whole time. And he actually buried that like for decades. And then finally, it all came back, and that was one of the coolest Bigfoot Odyssey interviews that I've heard. But there's been countless others. But I am big on just vibrations, and I've done enough weird fasting and seances and meditation that I know that there's a lot more going on outside of us that we can even perceive. But our soul definitely picks it up. But again, they've been on the outside of society for so long that they are like earthly beings that I think if human beings like gave up on this life, I think we'd be a little bit more in touch with our supernatural power side too. But again, I think that has to be trained. I don't think all Sasquatch can just mind speak. I think it does take training, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or maybe just different levels. We've heard stories from like Owl Man saying there's different hierarchies, and there's levels in the Sasquatch society that only certain ones are allowed to perform these magical things. But man, I definitely think that human beings are capable of magic. So these true Earthlings are definitely masters of it.
I want to talk a little bit about evidence as well. You've mentioned a couple of times the footprints, and that usually is where I end up. Everybody I've ever talked to, Jeff Meldrum had me convinced that Patty was real just based on the footprints that were cast that day on that sandbar. And I still go back and forth on the Patterson Gimlin film. We won't even have to get into that. But as far as the evidence is concerned, I said to Les Stroud when I had Les on the show, why can't we prove this? Why don't we have more evidence? And he said, what more do you need? Right? You've even alluded to that in this interview. There's so much evidence out there. And there are plenty of people out there who believe in this vast government conspiracy to cover up what's going on in the Sasquatch world. I believe there's parts of that are happening. I don't believe everybody. There's certain people on YouTube who will go nameless at the moment, who break my balls every single day about the show, that say I've had double agents for the government, like Jeff Meldrum on the show, who are talking out of both sides of their head to cover up this vast conspiracy about Bigfoot, which I think is complete and utter bullshit. I do believe there's some of that, right? I just don't believe everybody's a double agent. So let's talk a little bit about some of the evidence that's out there. It happened to me just in the last 3 days here on my property, and I put it out on the Instagram page, and I put it out in the Facebook group today. I took some video and some photos of this weird stump that I found on my property. I'm hiking with the dogs like 3 days ago, and I see this white, like gleam, anything that is out of the ordinary in the woods, like a bleached white turtle, it sticks out, right? So I look off this trail where I walk my dogs a couple of times a day, literally around my property. And I look at this stump, and there's this upside down, bleached half of a turtle shell stuck in the side of this like hollowed out, like rotten stump. And I'm like, that's freaking weird. So I walk over and I pick it up, and I'm like, how did that get? It's hard to explain, and it's even hard to even see, I guess, in the photos, because even my neighbors have been texting me tonight when they saw it on my Instagram. He's like, box turtles hibernate. They hibernate in things like logs. And I'm like, yeah, we've had box turtles that hibernate just, feet away from our house. We find them, during the winter, and they're stuck under the leaves and the mud, and they hibernate. But this thing, the way it was teetering on the side of this log or this hollowed out stump, it just didn't look natural. I can't physically. I tried to do it today. I tried to recreate everything that could possibly happen to stick that right there. And it wasn't there the day before, right? So it just showed up within the last 3 days. And I left it there. I put it back where I found it. And then today I went back and I was like, I'm going to make a video and see if anybody else, because I felt stupid. Like, I feel weird even saying this, but has anybody else found an upside down turtle shell stuck in a hollowed out log? And of course, immediately people are saying, I get people saying it's a trespasser on your property. Dude, you don't know my property. You don't trespass in this area. You get shot, right? You don't go on other people's property here. We got 40 acres, and somebody would have to trespass across like hundreds of acres to get to that one spot right off of a trail that I walk my dogs on for me to find that. It just doesn't make sense. Now, does it make sense that a Bigfoot put it there? I'm not saying that that happened, but there's a lot of tree structures around there. There's a lot of X formations, these fulcrum type teeter totter kind of configurations. Again, could be natural, but they're 40 feet, they're 40 yards away from where this turtle shell is, right? So I said all that to say, what do you think about tree structures and some of the footprints that we're finding? Let's talk a little bit about video and pictures. Some of the evidence is out there. Is there anything that sticks out to you that says 100%, I believe that that's the case, and that's 100% something that's convinced me that these things are real?
Oh yeah, I definitely think the evidence is out there. Just on my TikTok, man, I have shared dozens of pictures that are famous on the underground, and then also submitted by people. I know Turquoise and Sasquatch. She's up in the West Virginia mountains. She has these creatures climbing on her roof, and then they peek through the window, and she's gotten some crazy pictures. And I even, blew Cliff Brackman's mind temporarily with that, and yeah, he was speechless. But then there's old ones like the ancient one where there's orange type Bigfoot with black, dark skin. I'm pretty sure that was photographed in Colorado. I shared that a long time ago. There's dozens of photographs, and I definitely just encourage people. I hate the shameless plug, but I make them easy just to find. You can literally just scroll down my TikTok and see tons of great shots. But there's also great evidence, like the Patterson Gimlin is a solid shot, but I think there is a deeper story to that all. But the footprints are very, very compelling because they get examined by top doctors like Dr. Meldrum, and now it's expanded so much, and they've confirmed that human foot cannot do some of the things that these prints have recorded. So I just think that's definitely extraordinary. But not all of these strange creatures' footprints do have the metatarsal break and all the technical Bigfoot techniques and specifics. Like I see people saying, "Oh, no mid-tarsal break, not a Bigfoot." I don't know, man, because I think in these caves and these other hybrid type creatures, I think that the possibilities are out there. I casted a footprint deep in a cave that is very, very narrow, and it was going up, and we got the climb marks. And once I saw into the 400, some of his female cast, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that looks exactly what I casted," but I'm still open to it being a homeless hitchhiker that was walking down the railroad and he knew that there was water down there. So I'm big on just record it, share it. Let's just move on. Some of the hair that we've recorded and found that just matches up with other wildlife kingdoms. It's just very, very interesting, and I think the modern evidence of them being actually captured or killed is definitely out there, but it's being swept under the rug. I've interviewed people that have said they've killed them. I've talked to people that have said they've buried them. Down in Mayaca, there 1994, one dove at a hunter and he shot him right in the chest. And Donnie Miller, Standing Goats Rescue, has a really good interview that the guy goes deep into details. And either it's an awesome story around the fire or there's something to it. And for every interesting story you hear, there's a dozen more that were never even told. But man, I definitely think there is a war on the truth and a war on the evidence. Even these good TV shows, they simplify it all, and they're filming in one location and they get the evidence in another location. It's all entertainment. But that's why I like to go live on location when I'm casting these footprints, and you get to see me snot hanging from my mouth, half dehydrated, using the rest of my water that I'm supposed to be drinking to mix it up, and that's why I'm just trying to be the bridge to reality. No one's perfect. We're not movie stars. We're just outdoorsmen trying to bridge ourselves to these ancient ones. But just the evidence that I've been presented, being an open-minded hippie dude that isn't going to judge people, is mind-blowing. I know people that have held hands with Sasquatch, fed watermelon to Sasquatch, had them in his house. And just the stuff that we recorded in Flat Rock was just extraordinary. The sounds we recorded correlate with what happened in the Olympic Mountains. I think that there's some connection between it all, and that's truly extraordinary just to be a part of it. And I'm just a goofy dude that loves superstition. So if I can get my mark in somehow and change history or be a part of the future, then I'm all for it. And that's what this is. This is my life. Like I write the books. I talk about it at the game store. Even when I'm watching sports, I'm talking about the records, the legends, what happens if this happens. I'm always looking in between the lines and just trying to give people hope in this backwards life. And people think it's all black and white, and everything's predictable. I don't want like I don't expect anybody to remember my name or everything I spew out. I just want them to remember like the feeling that maybe I can like provide, just knowing that that asterisk is still out there. You can still wake up and your day is not preset. Like go out there and live the magic. And I feel like we're the last age of like humanity and freedom. So I'm out there hiking, biking, fishing, looking for fossils as much as I can. And I feel like it's my duty and it makes me feel alive. And I just love talking to witnesses too and just having my mind blown in like so many directions. And I love being in locations and then hearing about stories after it. I'm like, man, like it just makes my skin crawl in the best way. And I'm just like an explorer, investigator, but just at the bottom core, just a kid. I'm just a kid in the woods when I'm out there. So I'm climbing on things, enjoying myself, and that's what I definitely encourage people to do is just be yourself. Go fishing. You don't have to overdo it on the Bigfoot hunt. Definitely, put time to just Bigfoot, but just be yourself and be an outdoorsman. And the nature will provide. And that's why, when it's sad about hoaxers and people that kind of fabricate stories, dude, Earth is good enough. So how about just tap into your reality and, just put your blinders down and just do your best of conveying it. And that's what I try to do. I stutter. I'm not perfect. I slobber when I speak, but I'm just trying to share my experience with the world. And writing the books was definitely a good way to just get a lot off my chest, off my back, a good way to share my experiences so I could kind of just forget about them for a little bit. And then just I can always go back and figure it out. But I'm looking forward to more stories typed, more campouts attended, more witnesses spoke to, every day. And that's what's so cool. Like I Bigfoot has been proven to me, so I'm not like reaching like a point like we need this evidence. They've already been captured, they've already been killed, they've already been bred in captivity to use their abilities to find the free ones. It goes deep. David versus Goliath, guys. But man, I'm just trying to bring us back to where we come from. Like this is my church, this is my Bible, and there is, Cain the marked one, and the giant leviathans. Like I spend a lot of time deep sea fishing, looking for the Pensacola serpent, trying to hunt down the one that hunted down the divers. But then I also, spend time looking for missing people. I was just in Vortex Springs looking for Ben McDaniel. I was looking for Dennis Martin up at Cades Cove. I know he went missing in a different location, but that whole area has possibilities of, the Smoky Mountain mysteries. And then just recently, I was up in Dothan, Alabama. Riles Chapman. It's one of the most mysterious disappearance cases ever. He was running from his house saying someone was after him. And that correlates with a lot of David Paulides and Steve Stockton stories. And it happened in like a residential neighborhood right next to a big patch of woods. So I searched that creek for a couple hours looking for him, and I definitely felt closer to the case. And I'm planning on returning back in the winter when it's a little less grown up. But cold cases and missing people and all of that strange weirdness, I think it all correlates. So I'm definitely, Bigfoot, hairy man at heart, but just anything I can try to get clarity of in this blurry world. Blurry creatures, are these creatures walking blurs? I think they do have some abilities to mess with our technology. I've had lots of stuff go wrong. They broke my GoPro, my flashlights have went haywire, and then Doug Hychek and Jeff Harding, they talked about their heartbeat actually giving off infrasound. And if infrasound just affects the grid, then possibilities are open. But man, I just try to walk with the light, manifest my encounters and my hikes. I think about them days in advance and try to speak with my mind and loud. I speak out loud while I'm out there to the forest. And I am very aware of my dreams as well. They've reached out to me in my dreams, and they've showed themselves in their dreams. I don't know if it was like a flashback to my childhood that they were there, or just showing that they're always around and they can be. But it's wild. It's very cool, but it's very serious to me too. But it's church, it's school, it's fun, and it's like my living life, man. And I'm so lucky to be able to share it all and be able to be in the situation, because like I don't take it for granted any of the conferences that I get invited to, because I remember the times that I was just looking for Bigfoot by myself. I had pictures all up on my wall, and people would come in my basement and be like, "Dude, you're just a weirdo." And now I'm actually, getting some notoriety for it. So it's coming full circle, and some of my family members are a little bit more accepting to me now. And even hearing stories from back in the day, my aunt saw a banshee back in Ireland, and of course, she was scorned her whole life for it. So I feel like it's history repeating in a way, but it's also history correcting itself, because I can, stand up for her, stand up for the truth, and just for energy. I think that energy is eternal. It's never created nor destroyed. We've always existed. This has always existed on this plane. And luckily, we've came together during this time. And again, I don't take anything for granted. Every encounter, every experience, every conversation inside the Bigfoot world, outside the Bigfoot world, I try to take it as a lesson. I'm grateful for it. Of course, not every day is sunshine and rainbows. It's a roller coaster ride, man. And it's roller coasters, man. Amusement parks, haunted amusement parks. My newest book just came out. Every camp has a crystal lake, just yesterday. But yeah, man, I love it all, and I don't give in to the dark energy, because I walk with the light, and I just want to be contagious with that.
Well, you definitely are that. There were so many places I was going to go, but you brought it up, so I'm going to go. I'm going to tread lightly into the missing 411 thing. I've invited David Paulides on my show before, and he told me he didn't want to come on and talk about Bigfoot. So, and I get that. I understand that, right? But I do. I'm very interested in those kind of stories, and that's what I wanted to have him on the show to talk about, because there's so many people that go missing. So I'll just ask you, outside of the David Paulides 411, whatever. What do you think about all the disappearances in the state parks and in these wooded areas? Do you think it's something that's really mysterious, or do you think it's just victims of circumstance in certain cases? People are having these encounters with things. Maybe they're hearing things. Maybe it's mental illness, or whatever the case may be. What do you think is happening? Do you think a lot of it has to do with cryptids that are causing these people's disappearances? Do you think they're being taken, or what do you think about it?
I definitely think it's a widespread of explanations, of course, but a lot of the cases do lead to these cryptid type creatures, or just weird disappearances, maybe like alien abductions, or falling into another realm or oblivion, or falling into a portal or the back rooms. There's all these, fictional tales on the real stuff. But I do think that there is a correlation between the cryptids. Just, of course, the Dennis Martin story. The Key family supposedly saw little Dennis in a red hoodie being carried over the shoulder by a big feral creature, either the feral creatures of the Smoky Mountains, like Wrong Turn, or it was a Bigfoot tribe. And that case is really crazy. With the FBI agent, ended his life, and the Green Berets came in and supposedly wiped out a bunch of either Bigfoot or feral people, and then they found skeletons of missing people. South Force 10, he has a YouTube that his family members supposedly are the ones that were paid to hunt down these wild ones. There's definitely a lot of weird ones. And then Jared Adadero, he was a young boy that just got off the trail just a little bit. He was talking to these fishermen. And he's like, "Hey, are there bear around here?" And I definitely think that the bear was a Sasquatch, because why else would, if it was a bear, he would have knew. Everybody would have saw it. It wouldn't have just disappeared. I think that little Jared, saw the Sasquatch and then just tried to convey the message. And then last thing, he's never been seen again. And there's been so many stories of these little people, little puckwudgie people, but little kids being, taken by these bear or a dog overnight. And Paulides actually talked about Katie Flynn, probably my long lost descendant, was taken by a bear type creature, and it ate her shoe, but it kept her warm overnight. I definitely think that was a Sasquatch. A bear wouldn't do that, of course. And then there's these weird disappearances that I don't remember the name, but the dad and the son was very weak, and they were lost in the middle of the woods. And then he saw two headlights, so I would say kind of like orbs. He ran over to him. He's trying to flash him down, and next thing he comes back, and his son is missing. So is that Sasquatch able to control orbs and a whole distraction, or is that a whole different phenomenon like a alien abduction. We've heard, over 75,000 abduction stories. So definitely think there's something out there. But again, wave form and particle form. There are vortexes out there. The Montana vortex is a really well-known location. You could walk across a cement block and you actually shrink in size. So is there these weird triangles or weird windows that maybe are just temporarily there, that might swallow up these people? And are they in a different reality, or are they in a different oblivion? I don't know. But all we can do again is just analyze the data and bring it all together. There are these disappearances that they find their folded clothes in the middle of a river on a certain stone. Owlman talked about that being like a rogue Sasquatch maybe killed someone accidentally or on purpose, or a different type of creature. And then the Sasquatch, the guardians, are trying to, maybe clean it up, bring back a little bit hope for the family. But I just got to dive into every single case. When I was looking for Ben McDaniel at Vortex Springs, they say that he might have went missing underwater, and they searched all these weird caves and labyrinths, but they actually, used chemical testing on the water. No dead bodies ever were in there during the testing. But did he go missing in a tunnel that he just disappeared and got like sucked up, even underwater? Because we know water is water above, water below. It's the most malleable thing. It's what we're made out of. So maybe we could just tap into that. Are the creeks and the disappearances all related? Yeah, it all definitely connects. But I was hiking in the woods, which is not really talked about with the Ben McDaniel case, and there was one path called the Abyss, and I was just like lured to that, and that was one of the most like freaked out times I've ever had out there in the forest, because I'm like, man, I'm way off trail. No one knows I'm out here. I'm looking for someone that went missing. And I just went down a trail called the Abyss. Like, I wasn't even really scared of like Sasquatch. I was scared of like the earth sucking me up. So I definitely think that happens, because been some other times that they've had a total visibility of a person up like a rock face, and then they're just gone. They just disappeared. So definitely think the crevices, but there's times that people just fall into deep holes and then are cadaver dogs, and we just can't get to them. So there are times that it's just normal earth is just too much to get through. But I definitely think that the supernatural earth and just the real elements at play, disappearances happen, and it's very sad. But there's been stories of people being found decades later in islands and other continents, and they have no recollection who they are. So there always is hope that people can be out there. But there's also a chance that every cave you go into might be the last time. And it's like Coraline, she went into a different cave under her bed and she saw a different reality. I've heard stories like that too. So again, I'm open to it all, and I am aware that we are not stuck in our bodies. We are malleable. We are just energy. Cells are just vibrations. That's all it is. We are just vibrating. We're not even touching. We're all just close enough. So I think that the forest can break us apart somehow. But I definitely, so much respect and just positivity I could send to the families, just because it's horrible to have no answers. And I had a cat, my cat baby, had her for more than 10 years. And last April, she was ripped apart by some type of wild creature at my mom's house. And that took me on like a roller coaster of emotions, because I'm big on manifestation and like making things happen. And I'm like, did I make that happen? Am I paying a price for my research and my loudness and, just pushing this so much forward that I'm willing to die for it? But then, a loved one gets hurt and your pet dies, and it's like, man, like, is this even worth it? Because, you put out a good picture and then you get scorned and dragged across the concrete. So that goes back to the Janice Carter thing. It's like, dude, she's already given some great information out. So like, why would she, give the site to a grave, which is so sacred? For what? YouTube clicks? She works. Like, she's not looking for any of that. She's older. Like, she's not looking for any of that. And I think it's extraordinary. All the information that's out there, and sometimes we just got to dive in. And if I can be that door for people, just to be like, man, that crazy dude said this, let me look into it, I'm willing to be that. I'm that guy, and but I love being who I am too. I'm a crazy hippie dude to some people, but I'm like, I'm a good friend to many people too. So I've just walked that line of being myself.
Well, you've mentioned it a couple of times. Let's talk about the books. Let's talk about the documentaries, and let's talk about your YouTube channel. Tell us about the books that you've written, where people can find them. Let's talk a little bit about your YouTube page, what they can expect to see on your channel, and what kind of documentaries have you filmed and what's coming out.
Yes, thank you so much, man. I just actually published my 5th book yesterday. I wrote 5 books in the last 2 years. The first one was the first one was Erie Swamps Road Trip to Eden. And that talks about Lake Erie down to the Florida swamps. And the final chapter is in the Garden of Eden. And I had no clue about the Garden of Eden until I moved down here. So I feel like I was brought from the stars, just aligned with myself finally. And then my second book was Big Brother, Bigfoot. And that dives into 16 different expeditions, investigations, and encounters with these strange biped type creatures, ranging from the Sleepy Hollow Wolfman to the Honey Island Swamp Monster. I got a strange picture of a weird 8-foot bloated carcass there. And then also a tree peaker, like this black dark face with a big eyeball. It's, of course, could be pareidolia, and these creatures are definitely masters of disguise, but it's interesting. But the carcass was crazy, and it threw the tour guide for a loop. He wasn't going anywhere near it. But that book, Big Brother Bigfoot, talks about my journey from Ohio down to Florida, my journeys up in Canada, and then all the way across the country to California and back. Big Bear Lake. I don't think Big Bear Lake was named after big bears. They were talking about the Bigfoot. But then my third book was Every Camp Has a Crystal. I'm getting them mixed up. Another book of mine was Every Camp Has a Crystal Lake. And actually, that's my most recent one. That's why it's fresh in my head. But that one's about haunted schools, summer camps, and amusement parks that I grew up going to. So that is really cool because that's the place that we're supposed to find some guidance. But, as a teenage boy, we find it for ourselves, man. And then another one of my books was Panhandle Pirates. That one was one of the coolest ones because all the other ones were reflective. I wrote them about past ones. Panhandle Pirates, I wrote during it. Like I would be at Torreya State Park and we had that thing wade through the creek below us. And then that evening, I wrote that chapter. So it's a whole different perspective. So that one's pretty close to my heart. And we talk about the Mobile Wolf Woman, which is a she-wolf type of dog woman type creature that was spotted in Mobile that I loved investigating. Another type of weird giant called Huggin' Molly. She's from Abbeville, Alabama. Right on the Welcome to Abbeville sign, you literally see her running at you. It's on the sign. But if you're caught after dark in Abbeville, this giant woman will squeeze you so hard that your bones break and she screams in your ear till you go insane. You better hope you go deaf first. But that was a fun one. And then Cohelee Creek Goatman was another cryptid. He was a man that was killed by a hate group. They put him up in a tree. They never found the body. He turned into half man, half beast, and hunted down those ones who deserved it. So I was definitely, worshiping or paying my praise to that creature up in Georgia. But it's really cool because Panhandle Pirates is like Kraken and treasure because there's a lot of treasure. There's Money Cove over by Mexico Beach that we're digging for gold. I always have my metal detector. I've found lots of arrowheads. We found pieces of mammoth, megalodon teeth. So even when it's not Bigfoot, it's ancient Florida. So that is very close to me. I'm big on fossils and just any kind of sacred connection we can get. And then my last book that I haven't mentioned was Monsters and Mysteries Around the Corner. And that one, I knew what that one was about. I had my point. That one is we don't have to look far. We don't have to climb mountains. We don't have to go far in the swamp. Monsters and Mysteries are right around the corner. Boston Road, where I grew up, right around the street, is where I had some crazy encounters. But then that leads right to Helltown. Helltown leads to everywhere the Diablo can get. So again, man, like our reach is so much farther than we give us credit for. And that was big on family trees as well. Once I published 4 books, finally my family members were like, hey man, I got this crazy story. Let me tell you about it. I'm like, oh my God, you didn't tell me this when I was a kid? Things are crazy. But those are my 5 books. You can find them on Amazon. Just search Connor Flynn, Connor Flynn, probably long lost descendant of Errol Flynn, because he was an outdoorsman, an explorer, and then he was an actor too, filmmaker. So I've taken the same route. We made a couple documentaries recently. One just came out. It's called Panhandle Monsters. It's very mild. It definitely taps into more of the legends. Our evidence is presented in the next one, Bigfoot Physical or Phenomenon, something like that. They just changed the title. But Supernatural Spectrum is going to be releasing that. And I think he's going to be putting it on like Amazon and hopefully Tubi or something. But we're going to definitely have real life premieres, because down here in Florida, like at the paranormal conference down in Tallahassee, I know Stacy's planning on showing some of the clips of his movie, and at the Lakeland conference we showed Skunk Ape Experiments. So we're all about live audiences too. We're trying to spread it to the internet world, but there's nothing better than watching your movie with a live audience. And we actually got to watch Skunk Ape Experiments, Stacy's most recent film, but I actually helped out with the Bigfoot recreation scene. So it was really cool to like have a little bit of stake in the movie, but not be, tore out when people walked out. They were a little offended by the Aleister Crowley chants. It gets a little dark in the Outcast paranormal films. But that was a really cool documentary to work on. But then I also just shot a couple scenes for a Mothman documentary that hopefully will be coming out in the next year or two. And I'm just super excited about that, because that's back to Ohio. I got to wear my Ohio Buckeye stripes. And whenever I could be loud and proud about where I came from on this long journey, I've slept on a lot of floors. I've slept in my car a lot. And when I get to reference home, it brings me closer to like who I am and where I am. But all those documentaries are really cool and going to hopefully push the game forward. Like I said, the evidence that's in that one with Supernatural Spectrum, Doug Highcheck gave the thumbs up. We recorded some crazy sounds, and we actually just got sent a picture today of some like weird glowing orb, and there's nothing in back of there. And we're like, dude, that might have been a Sasquatch itself. So we're examining that. We're still compiling evidence, but that is all fun and that is all real. But then I also do fictional films too. I was in a movie called Zillafoot, half Godzilla, half Bigfoot. And it's really cool because it's SRS Cinema, and they actually own rights to a bunch of kaiju movies. So at the beginning of the movie, they had a bunch of little cameos from a bunch of other creatures. So the Easter Egg King Connor, movie expert, movie reviewer, wannabe expert. I'm like, oh man, I'm in the same universe as all those movies. But I was a cryptid research officer. The military brings me in for my expertise. And I tell them, what's what, man? They came from the firmament above and the cracks below, the pillars of the earth. And I had a light on my head and it keeps shining in the general's eye. So he's like, we got to get this guy out of here. But it's really fun. And it did so well online that it got a widespread release. So it's in Walmart, FYE, Best Buy, Walmart.com is where you probably got to find it, because you got to get lucky in the $3 bin to find that piece of junk. But I'm really proud of my scenes. But the rest of the movie is so bad, it's good. But that crawled so the Void Cat could walk and run and pounce. The Void Cat is a Dogman, werewolf, wild man, Splinter Cat mixture. It's just a cursed film. It's like a cat type beast, and I am the main character in that movie, and it's pretty wild. I find this weird structure relic in a silo. It's a cat. It's a weird beast, and I pick it up, and it takes over my mind. And then flash forward, and I'm having a movie night with my friend who done some bad things to his cat, and it's time to get some revenge. And it's just an awesome movie, and it did really good at the film festivals. It's won some awards, and we showed it to live audiences. And my funny one-liners that I thought were a blast, like those don't get laughed at, but my stuff that's just like embarrassing, that gets everybody cackling. So it's just fun to see the balance between it all. For all the ghost hunting and video game fanatics that are out there, a video game called Phasmophobia, it blew up on Steam and online during the pandemic because it's a cooperative ghost hunting game. You have to put together clues and you got to find the creature. Well, this filmmaker, Joe Cox in Tallahassee, he graduated from Full Sail, next level guy. He got in touch with the creators of the game, and he's like, hey, I'm going to make a short film called The Mare, Mare, and that's one of the beasts. And he knew I was the paranormal guy in the Panhandle, of course, so he actually hired me to be the mayor, the killer. And the movie just got cut finally, and it looks great. But they actually, and I've been saying this the whole time, we need more mayor. So we're actually doing a bunch of more additional shots to put more me in it. And I said, y'all should have done that the whole time. I was there already, man. But there was really cool scenes. I'm like banging my head relentlessly on a door, just trying to get in. And I freaked myself out. It's pretty fun. And then I actually just recently wrote a script called Southern Shamrock, which is Connor Flynn. I'm an Irishman, man. County Mayo is where my family came from. And I took a lot of pride in my Irish time in March 17th. Down here in the South, nobody cares that you're Irish. So it's kind of a cool leprechaun story about the South. And I'm actually going to play the leprechaun, and he like transforms and his skin starts like falling off. And I actually might cut my hair. It would be the first time in 6 years, but it will be worth it. It always grows back, of course, but I do grow my hair out because they are like antennas. The ancient people, they never cut their hair. Rock stars, they never cut their hair. Jesus Christ had long hair. There was a lot of weird studies that the military would do. I think they were kind of forced upon. That's why I say weird. On the Native Americans, where they would creep up on them in their sleep when they had their full head of hair, and then the natives would wake up. They would be alert. Then they'd shave their head, and they'd get a little bit closer, or they'd get all the way into cutthroat range. So it's very extraordinary that, I think that I've put like the last 7 years into my connections. And who knows, if I shave my head, I might be on my deathbed and one day be like, oh, I have no more feeling. But I'm just loud and proud, long hair, don't care, like Lil Wayne said. But I make fun movies, documentaries, write books. And then I also voice a character on the Paranormal Highway cartoon. And that is such a blast because it's a podcast. I'm a podcast host, a co-host to my buddy Eric on the Paranormal Highway, formerly Gypsy Road, where we do this news show about 4 or 5 times a week. And we cover UFOs, cryptid sightings, Mandela effects, and then just recent real events. And so there's a real life podcast, and then the cartoon, our characters are going to the podcast and we get abducted by aliens, and we have to try to get back to it. And we're 4 episodes in. We have like 22 minutes of content. I'm super proud of it. I can't wait till we start submitting that to film festivals. Like, I can't wait till we're in the stands and I'm like laughing at our cartoon. But we've got a lot of big YouTubers, just like a lot of good community members. Tex from Texas Front Porch just gave us the Zeus voice. But it's just super fun, and it's really cool because it's PG. So we make it for like, everybody. And then we give them the great details, like Bluff Creek. We're talking about Patterson Gimlin, all the California boys, all 1967. We drop the knowledge, like Hangar 18, Area 51. We're bringing the best of the Easter egg facts, and we're putting it into a cartoon, and it looks just as good as South Park or Family Guy. But it's so fun, and we've been writing the scripts on those, and those are my little babies, man. I just love hearing like my friends and like YouTubers that I adore, relaying my lines I wrote, and then it's just amazing. So I just try to spread in all different directions, and in real life too, man. Like you and I saw at Gatlinburg, I stay busy. I wasn't invited to that conference. I was probably actually blacklisted, probably. But no, they're cool because I actually spoke at the Great Florida Bigfoot Conference, and I had that crowd rocking, bro. They kept clapping after everything I said just because they didn't know like what to do. And I feel them, man. I don't know what to do sometimes too. That's why I get so animated and wild because my heart's beating, But this next month going to be really big for me. Can't wait to camp with you in Thunder Rock Campground, right on Cohutta Mountain. And I am huge on mud fossils, the mud flood, Tartarians, giants, Earth's biosphere is 1% of what it used to be. Cohutta translates to big frog. So guys, if you're listening, come camp on the back of an ancient big frog with me and Sasquatch Odyssey. It's very soon. But we had a lot of crazy encounters last year there with beasts and people. But it was an awesome time. I actually went whitewater rafting there because I had to, man. That's where they had the Atlanta Olympics. Like, that is important, man. And Altamaha is a serpent type beast that's in Georgia, and it links to that river. So whoever camps on the bank by the cliffs, there's going to be activity with twigs and stones being thrown on you. But if you're by the river, you got to watch out about Nessie's cousin. I just love just stirring things up, but also just deep diving. A lot of people are like amazed when I'm at a location and I have like a little bit background story. I'm like, yeah, man, a little research definitely goes a long way. And while I'm on the event crazy rant, I'm super excited for next month because the week after that, I'm speaking in Tallahassee at the Outcast Paranormal Conference. And I'm like trying not even to stress in my head, like, oh, what are you going to talk about, Connor? I'm like, dude, I'm going to be in the Tennessee mountains the week before. We got to let that unfold before I can even consider anything. But just super pumped. And the spooky season definitely brings out the best in me. So I'm going to be hitting like little hay rides around here and maybe even volunteering at some of the spooky stuff around here just because it's my season, man. And just this next weekend, I'm going to the Paracon in the Deep South Paracon. And I can't wait to link up with Jonathan Odom. And then the next week after that, he's hosting a camp out. So, man, I just can't wait to, dive in and share stories and then just be there with other people because there's nothing better than encountering something that we told doesn't exist with your friends or with other people that just appreciate it that much. And when you go to conferences, you leave with so many memories. And when you go to campouts, it's a bond, man. Like we're all family after that. So I'm so looking forward to it. And, just word to Kerry Arnold, man. It's all about unity in this whole community. And he did a good job of, fighting through the BS, ignoring the haters and just providing. And now we see it all together. And let's just carry on his legacy. And I'm big on that. And there's so many other people too. Tim Fasano, he was a legendary skunk ape researcher. He would run into the trees with his shoulder. That's how he would do the tree knocks. So man, I've done that. We gotta use all the different techniques from the OGs. Dave Shealy says lima beans. Use the lima beans. I've been told kitty litter. I put my cat's litter out there. I've been told frozen porta potty dong. Down here in Florida, I haven't seen ice in a while. But man, down there, guys, if you ever work in a porta potty, try to pay attention to that because they can eat anything with nutrients, man.
I'm definitely looking forward to next month as well. I'll have a link in the show notes to everywhere you can get Connor's books. You can check out his YouTube page. And certainly, I think there's maybe 5 or 6 spots left for the camp out October 15th and 16th up at the Thunder Rock. You can see Connor and I up there and hang out with a bunch of really cool people. Wayne from Animal Research will be there. It'll be a fun time. So I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes. Connor, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I knew you'd be a blast and you did not disappoint. I had a blast talking to you.
Dude, thank you so much. And you provide such a beautiful platform. So I'm a huge fan and thank you so much for, bringing me on for a show. And I definitely look forward to chopping it up with, the Sasquatch Odyssey family in the future. Please check me out on YouTube, Bigfoot Anon. I drop live, 2-hour videos from me out in the woods that I put together, pretty much fresh. And then I also narrate cryptid encounters, just like our buddies Dixie Cryptid and Nance and Leslie. I'm bringing my voice to it a little bit. Mine are a little bit more shorter stories. I definitely have the longer stories, but I have collected so many from YouTube comments, TikTok comments, messages to my email, messages to my Instagram. I have 10 episodes, 45 minutes long, just filled with encounters, just nonstop. So I'm just so excited to share those. Please follow me on TikTok as well. That's my most extraordinary platform. I have 92,000 followers on there. I'm reaching 100K soon, which is really cool just because I get to present evidence every day to more than 2 football fields worth of people, 2 football stadiums worth of people. But then I also get to go live. And we're not going to be going live at Cohutta Mountain because there's no reception. But when I'm out here in the Florida swamps, on a Sunday morning, I'm showing, 4,500 people the creek. So at the bare minimum, we're just expanding our love for nature. And that's all I am, man. I'm just an outdoorsman and just a liver. And I know that our big brothers are in the forest. There's things out in the sky, but there's secrets that are still left uncovered. And I want to be, remembered for something. And maybe I already am. Maybe we already are, but why not just keep, going after it till the end, man. And I cherish life. I cherish being able to have a mind to think. If you have consciousness, if you have time, you have a chance. You can manifest anything, and never sell yourself short in this. Stay positive during these really, really hard times. Don't let anybody ever talk you off your mountain ever, but definitely listen to advice, have empathy, but do not fall for everything. Believe in yourself, your family, and don't fall for any standard, because it is all an illusion. Just live up to who you want to be. And that's all I can encourage. And that's all I want to reflect to other people. And again, I know I ramble and I'm full of energy. Try to carry a little bit of that with y'all, get someone to ask, what has gotten into you? And then say, dude, I heard this crazy podcast and he got me going, but that's the power of energy. And it's beautiful when just A and B connect and we can see the world. It's a beautiful thing. If you guys like music, definitely look up C. Flynn. Check out The Void Cat. Zillafoot is on Amazon Prime. Tons of new movies coming out soon. My good buddy Mitchell Cole actually got the lead character in a feature-length horror movie. So he pulled some strings, and now I am going to be one of the tribe of people that I run out of the forest and try to stop the car. So look out for me on the big screen. Hopefully it's a little better than Zillafoot, but I just can't wait for the future, and just ready for whatever happens. And I'm definitely there arm in arm with the people on the front line, and I have much respect to everybody that's out there. And, my dad was a first responder. Much respect to you. Salute to you for all that you've done. All the good people that have served our country, for the military and on the underground. If you stand for something, I stand for you. So let's run with that, and definitely portray the best version of yourself. And when they say introduce them to God, introduce you to Christ, don't take someone to church. Be that. Be the creator's image, be the best you, and the earth will provide. I lived out of my car from Ohio down to Florida, and now I've tripled in denseness and who I am. And I walk the walk, and now I'm proud of myself. And I still have a long way to go in life and mind and everywhere. And this is part of the journey. So I definitely encourage everybody. It's never too late to start something new. It feels good learning new things when you're older. Challenge yourself. Try to challenge your body, your mind, your soul, but also be kind to people, because programming and things are crazy now, guys. So just be kind, be soft, but be strong and stand on your 2 feet. Brian, I can't wait to hike with you up in the mountains and hear some more of your personal encounters. But man, you'll get to see that there isn't. Hopefully, I won't average 391 words per minute in the swamp or in the mountains. Now, I tune it down. There's a place and time for everything. And when we're on radio, it is time to talk. But when we're in the swamp or up in the mountains, I shut up, man. I become one with nature. So I'm just looking forward to our encounters, and everybody that's out there, feel free to reach out to me. If you're going through something, I'll be there for you. Or if you just want to blow my mind, I'm there for you as well. But man, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I can't wait, man. We luckily, we were virtual friends. Like, I was a virtual fan of you, and then we met, and now we've created a bond, and now I can't wait to camp, man. And definitely keep carrying your positivity, and just let's definitely carry on the Odyssey name as well, man. So let's do it.
Absolutely. There you have it, folks. Thanks so much, Connor. I'll see you next month, man.
Thank you, bro. Looking forward to it.
They say